This is Pilleater. Today is July 19th, 2022. I am here with co-host Cartel Payne, and we are talking to Eric Edwards. Eric, it's nice to see you.
Hey, thanks. I'm still around, by the way.
Awesome.
I haven't kicked the bucket yet.
Well, I
Okay.
actually don't know much about Eric Edwards, but I'm sure Cartel Payne knows. So I guess to begin, for some of us who don't know who you are, what are you about and what's your career?
Well, I was an adult film star for decades, actually 4 decades. And in fact, I think they called me the first and only 4 decade performer. I started in 1969 doing early loops, like with Linda Lovelace of Deep Throat fame. Um, and she would call me and get me more jobs back in those early days because I was a legit actor. I was trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York under a full scholarship from ABC TV, which was awarded to me after auditioning 24,000 people across the country. So it was quite the honor for me to accept this and go to New York and study acting. But then my career snowballed and I got off into adult films and stuff like that. And it took me all around the world and everything like that. So I was having a blast. But after I started, like I said, I was the first and only 4 decade performer. Lord knows how I survived, but I did. And here I am today, 76 years old, retired, and talking to you guys.
I mean, yeah. So, what was your childhood like? Like, there's always this stereotype in the industry that, people with who do porn have terrible childhoods. But I know you had a great childhood, right?
Yeah, no, I did. I had a very good child, a lonely childhood, but because I was an only child, and my parents moved around quite a bit because of my father's business, and so I was kind of a loner until I got that scholarship to go to New York. So, and, I was also just kind of shy. Go figure that one out. A shy guy in an adult film, taking off all his clothes and everything like that. It doesn't make much sense, but I was one of the first back in 1969. There were very few of us, just a handful of people who would do these loops, and they were fun. They were quick, black and white at that time. Maybe a couple of hours shooting, and then you're paid, and you go home, and Linda Lovelace would call me and say, "Hey, you want to do another one? We did okay together. You want to do another one?" And I say, "Sure, why not?" The guys would get $40 back then, and the girls got 50, and I couldn't understand why they got $10 more than I did, because I was doing most of the work. But yeah, those were crazy days. But you know what? They were wonderful days too. Our country was very behind in its sexuality and growing up and accepting uh, well, just the whole sexual revolution, which I discovered that Europe was actually way ahead of us at the time. Whenever I got a job to shoot across the ocean there in France and Germany and Sweden, and I learned that we were kind of behind the times, but we caught up eventually.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, like, I know that you were involved with the, I guess you could say the counterculture, but you weren't technically a hippie. So what I wanted to ask was, they say people who have psychedelic experiences, like they become more open or, like have a spiritual experience. Like, did LSD, like, did that help open up your sexuality a little bit more or make you a more open person?
Very much so. Yeah. In fact, I used to trip almost every weekend, if you want to call it tripping, but it became kind of well, it was a thing back then. It's difficult to explain trips to anybody who's never really done it before, but it's a total awareness of everything around you and a magnification of everything around you that you'll never ever forget. But as far as sexual experiences on acid goes, it was the greatest. I mean, you can't even explain how really good it is. It magnifies every single feeling. So it was a lot of fun, I must say.
Yeah, but some people weren't, like careful, like Robert Crumb said his mind ended up muddled for a year because he did acid way too much. Like he kind of got paranoid.
Paranoia is something that can happen. In fact, I got kind of paranoid on one of my trips where I got lost in my own apartment building and I couldn't find my own apartment. And it was kind of scary. But for the most part, I never had a bad experience with it. In fact, it was very, very enjoyable. And like I said, sex on it was whoa, wonderful.
I mean, yeah, you're one of the lucky ones because like people like Brian Wilson and Sid Barrett kind of ended up messing themselves up a little bit.
It can. I'm sure it can mess people up if you're not in the right head, if you want to call it that. But for me, it was like a weekend enjoyment, and sex on it was just magnified so wonderfully glorious. I even went to Disneyland tripping my brains out.
Wow.
If you can imagine going to Disneyland and just getting lost in all these things, that Disneyland has to offer. But I would do that like on the weekends. Never had a bad trip, ever.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, oh yeah, like I also read your article that you did for like, what was it? Like, what's this? The Rialto Report, like where you said the women in your life, like, like I heard it was kind of like an unwritten rule that you're not supposed to date your co-stars, but it seemed like everybody did it back then.
Did what? Tripping acid? Or?
No, I mean date your co-stars. Like I heard that, in the porn industry that you're not supposed to, but I heard like a lot of people dated their co-stars back then in the sex industry.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding the question.
Oh, I said I read your article on the Rialto Report. It's called "The Women in My Life." Like,
right? Okay.
yeah,
yeah. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that article, getting it all out into the open and kind of like reminded me of my past and the women in my life, and each one was very special. So many have, passed away and stuff like that, and it was a good thing, a catharsis in a way for me to talk it out and to remember. And I'm glad you liked the article because it meant a lot to me also.
Yeah, have you thought about doing your own biography? I know that what's his name? Richard Pacheco or something. Pacheco has did his own like little thing. So have you ever thought about writing down your memories?
Everybody wants me to do that. Everybody, they keep saying, you've got to write it all down. You've got to do this. And I kind of started, but I got to a certain point in my own life where it was kind of painful. And for me to even admit or talk about basically my drug days. And I stopped. And so I couldn't continue. But yeah, Richard Pacheco, I think a few others have written down their memoirs and stuff like that. In fact, I guess Linda Alexander is an authoress who wrote a book about me, which actually is pretty informative in a way because she followed me around for a year, and she wrote all her experiences, and I found it kind of funny when she followed me around on one of my shoots as a director. I loved producing and directing my own movies, more so than acting, actually. I got a kick out of it all. And she followed me around in one of my films that I was producing and directing. And she was blown away by the dildo factory. I took her to the Doc Johnson's where they make, dildos and stuff like that. And she was totally blown away at that. And it's funny to read her descriptions of how she felt when she did this. But anyway, I have a copy of that book.
Do you still know anyone in the adult industry today, or do you participate in it?
Um, we don't really stay in touch that much. I really can't think of anyone at this particular time, other than, well, Jane Hamilton and I have communicated a bit. A couple of others, I guess, on Facebook. And it's nice to talk about the good old days because they really were the golden age. The golden age of adult films was the most incredible experience I think that I have ever had. It took me all around the world. It took me into Europe and Sweden and Germany and Africa. I got to see the Great Pyramids, riding a galloping camel in a blinding sandstorm. All these experiences, that I've had because of my industry. And yeah, it was just really fun.
It sounds, like Grace, like you were a part of history, basically, even though you probably didn't know it at the time.
I didn't know it at the time, but yes, I totally agree because, like I said, America was finally opening up to or catching up, I should say, to the rest of the world Because whenever I'd shoot in France or Germany and Sweden, especially, whenever I'd shoot in Sweden, oh, I got a story to tell you this. I stayed at the Hotel Mornington. And in fact, I think it's still there in Stockholm. And it was owned and run by women. And I thought that was really cute and clever. You know, but whenever I would come off of shooting that particular day, and I would come back to my hotel, and the night clerk, a woman, of course, would say to me, "Oh, how you doing, Eric? Did you get it up today?" And I would say, "Oh yeah, we did good." But the Swedes were so wonderful, and just shooting in Germany and shooting in well, like I said, I rode a galloping camel next to the Great Pyramid in Egypt before it became a tourist attraction. But things like that I did, I would never have a chance to do that if it hadn't been my business.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the porn industry today? You know, like I think it's kind of a double-edged sword because it's like on the one hand, like, you know, like a lot of the stuff is cheaply made, but on the other hand, it's like women with OnlyFans have probably a lot more power than they did back in the day.
Well, it's hard to talk about the business today because it has changed so much. I think what has happened is that we've kind of gone backward in time, back to what loops used to be like. Only now they're on high def video and everything like that. But it's basically the same thing. The old days, the golden age, I like to call it. Well, that's what it is called. Of when they would have full-length features. Those were the best times of my life anyway, because you would get together with cast and crew and we would have a goal in mind to produce a very good product. Nowadays, it's just kind of like the way the loops used to be, where you would film a sex scene, and it would be in high def, where you could count every pubic hair or whatever. You know, I mean, I'm kind of afraid to check it out these days, but I like the golden age. Where the films were classy, and they had good actors, good cinematography. In fact, a lot of the people on the cast and crew of my films moved on into mainstream and became well-known names. I can't mention those names, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. And they got their knowledge and their the beginnings of their own career in the adult film industry, and then they moved on, which I think that's a cool thing too. Quite proud of them.
Yeah, you know, the thing I like about classic porn is like there didn't seem to be like so much plastic surgery back then that there is now. I mean, of course, you know, some women had surgery like Candy Samples, but you know, like she was kind of like the exception. Most women were still kind of natural or average looking. You know, they weren't like they weren't going overboard with the makeup and the implants and everything else like they are now.
I don't know if they have makeup artists now, or do they, like on a shoot where you go and they do your hair, they do the makeup, they do, they're really good at what they do. But back then, back in the features that I was in, they'd have a 30-person crew, lighting, camera department, makeup department, costume department. I mean, this was big budget, good stuff. I don't know if they even have stuff like that anymore, or why would they? Because it's already been done anyway. But I always had it. It was always enjoyable for me to sit in a makeup chair and just get pampered. I mean, for a guy, that's kind of cool. They even made up the men too back then.
I like the aesthetics of some vintage pornography. I came across an old gay porno film called These Bases Are Loaded. And I'm not gay myself, but just watching it and kind of hearing this synthy kind of soundtrack, and it must be the film or the graininess of it, gives you this kind of out of touch feel where, this was made decades ago. And I'm not so sure if the eroticism leads up today, or you kind of look back at it with nostalgic charm or something like that. Do you think people still find the old pornography erotic, or has it kind of has this niche place where it's like vintage horror films or something? Like, wow, there's just naked people from the 70s in here or something.
It's funny you should say that, because I think there comes a point where you lose the eroticism if it's just too crystal clear. If you know what I'm talking about, I mean, like the high def that they have nowadays, and it just, first of all, as a director myself, I talk to a lot of women about what they thought was erotic, and I got it all. I don't know if you have ever seen one of my own productions, but I tried to make things erotic in a different way. I learned from women that they like a tease, and so I called it the tease, where I wouldn't just jump right in to, wham bam, thank you, man. I would always build up to my erotic scenes slowly, and so I learned that technique. I think I had three of my favorite movies: Mirage, and Memoirs of a Chambermaid, I think was my final one, which I think is, well, I'll pat myself on the back, one of the best couples movies I think that I've ever done anyway. But anyway, I enjoyed. I listened to the women. I listened to what they had to say and what they found was sexual, and so I put that into my movies. I would, instead of just jumping right into some like extreme close-ups, I would do the tease.
Yeah, I want to ask, like, why do you think so many porn movies have like bad editing, or the acting is kind of not that great?
Well, I loved editing, first of all. I learned editing on a CMX system years and years and years ago. And then I went to Final Cut Pro. I'm sure that technicians know what I'm talking about back then. Anyway, editing is just as important as shooting. You pick and choose certain shots and everything like that make it erotic, the way that you cut it, the way you put it together. I loved it. But I'm sorry, I kind of got lost in the editing thing. What was your question?
Oh, what was he saying? Oh, I said, why do you think some porn movies have bad editing and bad acting? That's what I said. Yeah.
I couldn't quite hear you. What?
I said, why do you think some porn movies have bad editing and bad acting?
Well, the bad acting situation is because back in my day, most of the people, the talent in the industry, were trained actors. Uh, I mean, I was under scholarship to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, paid for by ABC TV. Uh, uh, Jane Hamilton was a wonderful trained actress. Um, Veronica Hart is her stage name. Um, all of these people, or at least most of them, had formal training at various acting schools or what have you. And that made a big difference. I mean, you can see the difference in when you see somebody on screen. The one thing that I learned, and you're going to get a kick out of this because uh, the very first film that I saw myself in, uh, I think was Fringe Benefits. I'm not sure, but anyway, it played in a big theater, a 35 millimeter film, and it played on like a 30-foot screen, big thing, an opening that, oh, it was Firestorm. Sorry, Firestorm. And I was sitting we had a big opening where we did, Kay Parker and I did handprints in the cement in Hollywood, right there in Hollywood. They're still there too, by the way, our handprints in cement. And we had this big opening, and I sat there in the audience. I had never seen myself on a 30-foot screen before. And it was like embarrassing, like your tool is like, 20 feet long or something up there on the screen. I started to shrink down in my chair like that. But those were the good old days. They would have openings. And on that particular opening, Kay Parker and I put our handprints and I think I put my footprints too in the cement on Santa Monica Boulevard in Hollywood, just west of La Brea, I believe it is, or east of La Brea, one or the other. Anyway, it's still there. Those are the good old days, golden age.
Feels like today, from my observations, that with Pornhub, X videos, whatever mirror site you have, today's pornography is such high quality and eroticism that you may even find films from like a decade or 20 years ago from, most actresses today, I guess, retire or just don't even do porn until much later. And so some of the new pornography that comes out actually just stays on the internet because of the internet's nature of just holding up data. And so you end up people watching reruns of films that happened back in 2002, filmed from Bang Bros or Reality Kings or something. And so that means that there's kind of generational splits in pornography. Do you think right now that pornography is now like reached an end to eroticism? In other words, that there are kind of just it's just one erotic vision after another, and there's nothing really interesting or beautiful happening, and it's kind of now stagnant. Or are there some kind of more insidious influences happening right now?
Well, I haven't really seen anything nowadays. Uh, I enjoy watching the old time movies that I was in, uh, simply because I think they're more erotic. There comes a point when if you shoot something where there's no tease, like again, we talk about the tease. If you shoot something just bam, there it is. Somehow it loses the eroticism, I think. And I don't know. I haven't really seen anything these days, but I can kind of gather what it must be like. Um, mm, but yeah, there just comes a point when well, if you go way back, if you go back into the well, it's late 50s or so, early 60s. If you go back then, and you watch, for example, Joe Sarno and Peggy were some of my favorite friends and one of my favorite directors. He agreed with that philosophy also, where if you show too much, then it's no longer erotic. So whenever he would shoot, he would, for example, just maybe brush by a particular close up or something instead of just hanging in there and showing it all. Maybe just brush by it, which, oops, wow. That was more erotic to see than just staying on it, hang in there for half an hour. Hey, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm from the old school, and I enjoyed being from the old school.
We're close to the end of the podcast. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to share, Eric, about your future projects?
I don't really have any future projects. I'm sorry. No, I'm retired. I'm pushing 80 at this point, and I feel pretty darn good. I live in the mountains. I got lots of fresh air. I go out and I hike in the mountains and everything like that, and I'm having a blast. And I have a collection of my movies that people have sent to me. I probably got like 600 films in my closet back there, and it's nice to remember the good old days.
Cartrell, is there any final questions you'd like to ask?
Um, oh yeah. Where'd you get that cool shirt?
Uh, I think I got it at Target.
Really? I thought you would have got it from like Hawaii on vacation or something.
It looks like a Hawaii shirt, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I had a bad experience with John Derek and Bo out in Hawaii. I'm sure you've read about that.
Oh yeah.
Love You was the name of the movie.
Well, at least you got a free vacation out of it.
Hey, free trip too. I always liked going on location. Going on location was like just a blast. I mean, you get to travel the world, like I said, on a galloping camel next to the Great Pyramid. I got thrown. Did I tell you that? Damn camel threw me off. I landed in the sand. I lost both of my contact lenses that particular day. But all these experiences, when you go on a film shoot, I really miss them.
Eric, thank you so much for being on. And thank you, Cartel Pain, as well.
Okay, thank you.
This podcast was sponsored by www.pilleater.com, youtube.com/pilleater, and as well pilleater.substack.com. Thank you.